So this is the question what I want to bring up here, and I actually have the specific tweet that I wanted to mention, that Denver Broncos 365. So it's at Daily Broncos, and if I'm continuing to learn how to use this StreamYard, right? You guys ready to see a little shared screen action? Whammy, here we go. And so I still got it. All right. The caption right here is Michael Penix is the type of quarterback you don't draft and regret. Like Lamar Jackson, trust your eyes. Okay? So that's why I want to bring this up, and I will stop sharing the screen now, and we'll go back to the full screen, full panel. I'm really intrigued about the game in Chicago with Chicago and Green Bay. I think Justin Fields, I personally want to see him stay. Take out the contracts aside. I think there's confidence there. He has playmaking ability. He's not going to be, we talked about last episode, he's not that, the quick read, get it out of your hands quickly, like we mentioned, like with Brock Purdy or some of the other quote-unquote pocket passers, but he can extend plays. He can throw the deep ball extremely well. And you saw he can put some velocity on the football and make some dimes of throws like he has the DJ Moore. So, guys, Michael Penix is balling out right now. And I know the one thing that's being held against him is age. And that's the next thing I'm going to pick up. But, Zach, I'll start with you. Should Michael Penix be the quarterback? If there's going to be the first quarterback taken off the board, should it be Michael Penix Jr. over the other ones like Caleb Williams and Drake May?
No, it shouldn't. I mean, as much as I agree, Michael Penix should be a top 5 pick. I think he should be a top 3 pick. He's one of the top quarterbacks. If I would say he's top 2 quarterback in the draft, I just think Caleb Williams' talent is still just so Caleb Williams does those things athletically as well, where he almost has a Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson effect, where it's the wow factor. It's the how did he get out of that? He creates plays with his legs and can still find guys downfield. I think they're going to end up being pretty even in when it's all said and done, Williams and Penix. But like you said, the age thing does concern me. I think he turns 24 in a few months, 2 months. So, I mean, definitely an older quarterback, but I don't know. I would still go Caleb Williams.
So Michael Penix Jr. is going to be 24, Caleb Williams 22. Quinn Ewers is going to look like he's going to go back to Texas at the moment. He's 21. Drake May is 22. Then you have Bo Nix 24, JJ McCarthy 21. So you get the point. It's just that the age of 24, Rocco, when we're looking at what some of these other young quarterbacks are doing, across the NFL, there are starting quarterbacks in the NFL that are younger. And I think that is a big question mark that a lot of teams are looking at. But should that be overlooked? Because it should just be about your play on the field. And the reason why I bring this up, context, Justin Fields is 24 right now.
I think that's something, Rip, that GMs are definitely going to look at when it comes to, when it factors in. Michael Penix, his talent is unbelievable. Just like watching him, the eye test, if we're talking about not passing up on a guy and you're going to regret passing up on him if you do, he was throwing darts out there on the field, like pinpoint accuracy. The one touchdown late was just an absolute laser. And it was beautiful. As a football fan, that was amazing to watch. Now, I will say this. There's going to be some recency bias there from us and from everybody currently watching Michael Penix and what he's doing, because Caleb Williams isn't playing. He didn't play in his ball game. His season's over, and he's waiting. He's working right now. The age, it could definitely play a factor. Like, to answer your question, of course, because GMs are going to look at that. But the talent's there, man. I don't think this is a guy that should go outside of the top 10 picks. I think he is a surefire top 10 pick and should be. His talent's there. He can get it done, and he's a winner. So it'll be interesting to see what he does in the national championship game against Michigan and how he approaches that defense. And then we'll probably have this conversation again. But right now, I would agree with Zach. Caleb Williams, he's probably going to be the first quarterback taken, and I believe he should be, but Michael Penix shouldn't be too far behind.
So then that leads kind of Nick, because you've been in locker rooms with guys, and from talent that you realize this player is so tremendous, but also leadership. I mean, right now when I look at Michael Penix Jr. or Big Penix Energy, as Desmond Howard would say on College Game Day, electric. There's something to that mentality when you have a quarterback that you gravitate towards. And I mean, you see it here in Baltimore, but is that something that NFL teams should consider when they're picking the franchise quarterback for they hope it's going to be the next decade?
I definitely think they do. I wasn't sold on Penix just because they play in the Pac-12 and they're not typically known for having really good defenses. I know he lit it up, but there was 3 or 4 or 5 other quarterbacks in that conference that lit it up as well. But after watching him this past weekend or on Monday against Texas, against the defense that was top 10 in the country in several different categories, and then they also handled Alabama at Alabama, and they were pretty much dominant in the Big 12. I think Michael Penix definitely boosted himself and put himself in a conversation that Caleb Williams, part of your job as a quarterback is to win football games, especially at this level. I mean, guys get criticized all the time for what's Lamar's knock. He doesn't win in the playoffs. Like he doesn't win. it's the quarterback that doesn't win. And you were preseason, number 3, I think, at USC, and then they finished 7-5. And not to say that Caleb Williams isn't still the most talented quarterback in college football, but Michael Penix was throwing some absolute dimes. And he did in the Oregon game in the Pac-12 championship too, against Bo Nix, who everybody thought he was a shoo-in winning the Heisman with all all he did this year at Oregon. And Michael Penix goes in there and outplays the guy that everybody thought for sure was going to win the Heisman at that time anyway. And I'm like, what more do you want? Yeah, he's 2 years older than Caleb Williams, and he's older than some of the guys in the league. I get it. But Tom Brady played till he was 45. Not saying he's going to play till he's 45. That's an awkward comparison. But even A-Rod's 40, 39. Matt Stafford's got to be, 37, 38, 36, something like that.
Joe Flacco's 39.
Yeah, guys are playing till 40, nearing 40, especially as much as they're protecting the quarterback with how much they can get hit, where they can get hit, how hard they can get hit. They can't even get landed on anymore.
Yeah.
So 2 years isn't, to me, it's not that big of a deal.
Stafford's 35
Okay, so yeah.
Just found out me and him have the same birthday.
Wow.
Hey, congrats, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. Oh my God, thank you.
Really
guys.
good. Really good.
Thank you.
This is the argument that I've actually been trying to make since we actually talked about Caleb Williams being the number 1 overall pick earlier in the season, and it really kind of came on the heels of how Caleb Williams actually loses. So I thought that you brought up a good point, Nick, as far as quarterbacks that win, and Michael Penix Jr. is that guy who just keeps winning, and his maturity level, I think, also plays a factor when it comes to GMs. And we've seen kind of like these outlandish emotional reactions from Caleb Williams, and you have to wonder, right? Like, if you're a GM putting your GM cap on, you have to wonder, like, what are your leadership qualities going to be? Is it going to be all about you because of the way that we've kind of seen him display himself on and off the field? Do those things come into play, and are they cause for concern? And for me personally, I would rather have a guy like Penix who plays his ass off, and then also kind of shows that leadership and doesn't really react with so much emotion that it's becoming a distraction. That's kind of where I'm coming from on the whole situation.
Yeah, the other part that I was thinking about, and actually there's another quarterback that came on the scene later. Yes, he didn't have the injury history, but he led one of the best college teams, arguably the best college team in the history, and especially people down south would think so in Louisiana. But Kevin, you have an idea of which quarterback I'm referring to?
Joe Burrow himself.
And Joe Burrow, I believe, was 23, 24.
Yeah, I think he was definitely older.
Yeah.
So that
he's old because he's older than Lamar Jackson.
Correct. So he's 27 right now. He's drafted in 2020. So when we're looking at this, right? It was 2020. I'm not losing my mind.
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah.
2020.
So Kevin, we're talking about this, and Joe Burrow completely changed the franchise for the Bengals.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about teams drafting quarterbacks, I mean, it is such a big decision. Like, there's so much that goes into it. And I think sometimes teams can just, 1, overlook things, but 2, I think that sometimes they just they try to play it safe in their mind when in reality they should just take the guy that's the best fit. And I see a good comment about Michael Penix here from Alan that he thinks Penix is closer to his prime than some of the other quarterbacks and could win earlier in the right situation. Some of those throws that we saw against Texas, those were NFL throws.
Yeah.
Those were dimes.
Absolutely.
And so when you look at like the landscape of what these teams are, a team that I've talked about forever is the Falcons have like they have Bijan and Drake London and
So
Kyle
much
Pitts.
talent.
They need to
So
use
much
You
that
get him
talent
a
somewhere.
quarterback, right?
Yeah.
And so could that quarterback be Michael Penix? I think in the right situation, Michael Penix can thrive. But again, it's like what we've talked about this with Lamar, or what if Lamar doesn't go to Baltimore? The Ravens believed in Lamar and they trust Lamar and they change their entire system, their entire offense for him. I think that Michael Penix is someone where you can plug in and he can perform. But I think a spot like Atlanta would be really good for him just because of where he is in his career right now. And I wouldn't play this guy. I think if you're looking at injuries and looking at the age, it's a factor. I'm not saying it's not, and I think it should be. But yeah, we just talked about it. Guys are playing later. And I think that if you're going to discount a guy and knock his grade down half a round or a full round because of that, I think that's not fair to him because you're potentially losing out on that potentially generational talent just because of things that are factors, but I don't think should be as big factors moving forward.
I agree. I agree with that. And that's the part of it. At the end of the day, it's you have a quarterback that you think is going to push your team to the next level. It doesn't matter with the age. I get it. Maybe it's not with Brandon Weeden when the Browns took him and there was a significant age gap. We're talking about
that was
talk about age.
That was crazy. Now that was the
something
Browns.
different.
That was the Browns. That
He was what,
we
30 years old?
He was like 20. He was 28
or
years old.
something, yeah.
And the Browns. That was the Browns being the Browns.
Well,
That
but-
was-
Zach, what did we say? Zach, what did we say earlier?
yeah, it was teams took. What we were talking about?
Teams took a chance on Brandon Weeden. I think that's what I said.
Yeah.
And then what did you say?
I said no. Teams did not take a chance on Brandon Weeden. The Browns took a chance on Brandon Weeden. There's a massive difference when we're talking about.
Yeah, he was the oldest player ever taken at 28 years old.
I just.
Crazy.
I
Hey,
will
Rick.
say Caleb Williams crying in his mom's arms after that loss to Brad was like, on draft day where they have to ask Callahan why none of his teammates showed up to his birthday party. And like, that's the big thing. Like, we can't draft him because his teammates hate him. Like, Brad saw Caleb Williams crying in his mom's arm and he was like, undraftable. That was it. He was like, undraftable.
It wasn't even just it was that, and then he continued to cry.
Well,
after.
it was when he said that he wanted to go home and cuddle with his dog. Brad
Yes.
was disgusted. He was like, "You should be in the film room after that loss."
Yeah, Brad forever is out on Caleb Williams being the number 1 overall pick, but someone's going to take him. Talented player,
for sure.
but at the end of the day, the goal is to win games. The goal
Rocco.
is what's up, Rock.
So since he's drawing, his name gets brought up with Mahomes, Caleb Williams, he's getting a lot of those comparisons and whatnot. I do want to say this: winning in college or losing in college doesn't necessarily always translate to the NFL, depending on the situation. And I wanted to look up Mahomes' record in college at Texas Tech. And I know it's Texas Tech and USC. They're two completely different programs, and the expectations were so high for USC this year. People were talking about them like they were going to be a national championship team. But I just want to put this out here. Mahomes' record in college was 13-19. His best season in Lubbock came in 2015 when Texas Tech went 7-5 in the regular season. So I'm just saying.
So, but also at least with Patrick Mahomes, is that he went to the best possible situation that he could.
Yeah.
You went to the team that has arguably the best offensive head coach in the NFL, offensive mind, and then also got to sit behind a very solid veteran quarterback in Alex Smith and help develop him. If
Might
Caleb,
not be a bad idea with Caleb.
yeah. So, but that's the part is the number 1 overall pick. It's going to
Yeah.
be a team that's desperate and you better have the right pieces in place. Now, if it is Chicago, these next moves, we'll find out. We'll dive more into that, but we wanted to bring it up because it's context. And as we know, finding a franchise quarterback is so damn hard. We talked about it last show about number 1 overall picks over the last, the 10 number 1 overall picks as quarterbacks. It's pretty uneven when you look at the number of if it's panned out with them with their specific team or teams had to restart right after them.